Hello everybody, I'm Dr. Urvashi Sharma, Associate Professor, Department of Journalism and Mass Communication. In today's session, we'll be looking at the role of language press and we'll give emphasis on Marathi newspaper and its editor. So before we begin the session, a big sort of a recap on the role and development of press in India. The process of development of press in India can only be partially attributed to British government. Although it is credited with the introduction of press in India, which was independent, the growth of journalism and the Indian press was initially hindered by British government to a large extent. The inclusion of the press was done by British government during the colonial period with the intention of smooth passage of information. Later, the development of press in India contributed immensely to the freedom struggle against the Britishers. Despite the introduction of journalism and the press, hard efforts were made by the British to curb the development of press in India at that time. This was done to prevent spread of patriotic and nationalist opinions of the Indians. Yet it became one of the most important mediums to spread the message of partisan and enhance the struggle of independence. The development of press in India became an essential tool in the freedom movement of India. The history of the development of press in India started with the creation of a newspaper called the Bengal Gazette, which was started by James Augustus Hickey in 1780. The paper was also known as Calcutta General Advertiser. The credit for the origin of the Indian press in the colonial period therefore goes to James Augustus Hickey for sowing the seeds of journalism in the country. The Bengal Gazette was the first newspaper ever published, but its operation was stopped soon in 1872. The reason behind this was aggressive condemnation of East India Company through articles. The role of press in the freedom struggle was considered very important. After Bengal Gazette was stopped from publishing, many other newspapers came into existence, such as Calcutta Chronicle, the Bengal Journal, the Bombay Herald, and Madras Courier. Seeing the introduction of so many newspapers, East India Company expressed its concern regarding the news of their unfair practices in India. To prevent the information from these newspapers from reaching London, the East India Company sought to impose certain restrictions on the publication of all newspapers and journals, which we have studied in the previous sessions. Marathi Press Marathi Press played a very important role in development of Indian journalism in the latter half of the 19th century. It distinguished itself by campaigning on two fronts, social and political. Outside Bengal, the battle for social reform first gathered strength in Pune and Bombay before it spread to the other parts of the country. Marathi Press was the vanguard of this movement. On 6th January 1932, Bal Shastri Jambekar published Bombay Darpan, a Marathi English fortnightly magazine from Bombay. So, if we talk about Marathi journalism was journalism which was working on two fronts. First was national or so political, and second was social. On social front, the newspapers or the articles were focusing more to talk about social reforms like eradication of untouchability, right? They were talking against caste system, women education, empowerment. And on the national front, the aim of the Marathi journalism was to mobilize the youth to fight for the cause of the independence of the nation. So we can see that Marathi journalism was fighting or campaigning against two say, two uh, elements of society, which was the social evils and the other was political. Mahadev Govind Ranaday, in a review of growth in Marathi journalism in 1898, noted the existence of three daily newspapers, two of which were published in Bombay. They were the Mumbai Vaibhav, started and edited by K.P. Mahilade, and in 1893 Guraki, edited by Ellen Joshi. The next Marathi daily to be published from Bombay was Rashtamarth, edited by S.K. Damle and published by Rashtamarth Publishing Company in 20th century. Sandesh was started in Mumbai in 1915 with A.B. Kholatkar, another notable personality in Marathi journalism, and a strong supporter of Tilak. K.P. Khadilkar started Navakal in 1923. It was Khadikar who introduced modern methods of production in Marathi press. In order to attract reader, he introduced regular weekly features of commerce, industry, agriculture, games, etc. Navkal had a sister publication, an evening daily titled Sandhyakal. Prabhat, edited by P. M. Bhagwat, was the first Marathi daily to have simultaneous editions in Bombay and Pune, the trend which became a widespread in the later years. Sakal occupies a pride of place in Marathi journalism. N. B. Parulekar, fondly known as Nana Sahib, published it from Pune on 1st January 1932. It changed the way news was to be presented in Marathi newspapers. It made serious efforts to publish the latest news. S. K. Kulkarni commented, "Only with Sakal, Marathi readers tasted the flavor of fresh news. It was the beginning of new era, the era of real newspapers in Marathi. Sakal changed the way news was viewed, collected, written and presented. It set a new benchmark and a new standard for Marathi journalism. Within its year of starting, Sakal Nanasaheb launched a weekly titled Saptahik Sakal. Few days later, he launched a low-priced titled The Tej. He started daily Swarajya from Mumbai in 1936. However, financial considerations forced Tej to become a weekly, and later it was shifted out of Mumbai and finally closed down. Nana Sahib had the rare combination of sharp business sense and social commitment. Both of them used journalism for the social service, yet kept the venture on a solid business footing. A number of Marathi dailies came up in 1940s. Among them was Nava Shakti, founded by Sadanand in 1942, and Lok Sangraha from Pune. The history of Marathi journalism has had a profound impact on Maharashtra society. Marathi journalism has been an important medium of communication. It helped to create political, social, and cultural awareness amongst the people. The history of Marathi journalism played a key role in promoting Marathi language and culture. It had contributed to the growth of Marathi literature, art, and music. Marathi journalism has been instrumental in bringing about social reforms in Maharashtra. Now, there are some reasons why we focus on the importance of Marathi journalism. Now, Marathi journalism has contributed to the growth of Marathi literature and art. It reached the people outside the state. It contributed to the Indian freedom struggle because Marathi journalism was campaigning on two grounds. First was social reforms and second was nationalist movement. So we were able to mobilize the public living along the coastal areas of Maharashtra towards the freedom struggle movement. Its spread as a medium was spreading nationalist ideas because the newspapers were read by the people who were spread across the entire state. So the more people were able to read, understand, and comprehend the nationalist ideas, more people were able to talk about it and generate awareness amongst their counterparts, and this led to the spread of the nationalist ideas. It also played an important role in mobilizing the people towards a common cause, which was freedom. Marathi journalism has been the cause of various social reform movements in Maharashtra. It has highlighted various social reforms which were revolving around women empowerment, women education, uh, eradication of untouchability, and social reforms against the child marriage, etc. It has raised political and social awareness because politically how now the ideas of nationalism, Swaraj, independence were were propagated along amongst the masses, and also about the social issues. People were informed that how uh, getting rid of these social evils, Indian society can be a progressive society. The history of Marathi journalism has enabled people to become more informed and engaged citizens. Marathi journalism has played a key role in preserving Marathi culture and tradition. History of Marathi journalism has helped to promote regional identity and cultural diversity. It has contributed to the growth of Maharashtra as a society. Now let's look at some of the prominent journalists and the editors of Marathi language. So we begin with Bal Shastri Jambekar. Bal Shastri Jambekar is known as the father of Marathi journalism. He started the very first newspaper, Darpan, and revolutionized the journalism system in Maharashtra. He was a classical Indian scholar, journalist, and a social reformer. On 6th January 1832, Bal Shastri Jambekar published Bombay Darpan, a Marathi English fortnightly magazine from Bombay. By May 1832, it became an 8-page weekly. The objective of Bombay Darpan was to convey information on passing events and to point out ways and opportunities for improving the condition of the people. It was the first medium of Marathi expression in engagement with current and passing events. Bombay Darpan played a notable part in the social reform movement and had considerable influence. It specifically dealt with the issue of widow remarriage and tried to develop scientific temper amongst the masses. This resulted in large-scale debate in society and finally in a movement to support women widow remarriage. So we see that initially when we had discussed the Marathi journalism had to campaign on two grounds, one being the social issue, the other being the political one, which was more of a nationalistic feeling. Here we see how through his newspaper Bombay Darpan, Bal Shastri Jambekar was able to put forth the idea of social reform which revolved around a very sensitive issue of widow remarriage, and also to develop the scientific temper amongst the masses. Scientific temper, which meant coming out of the shackles of orthodox thinking. So he was able not only able to mobilize the masses towards a cause which was widow remarriage, but he was also able to turn it into a movement which further resulted in acceptance of widow remarriage in society. After 8 years, the weekly was named United Service Gazette Journal. It ceased publication 2 years after the death of Jambekar in 1846. In 1840, Jambekar started publishing the first Marathi monthly, Digdarshan, and edited it for 5 years. Jambekar is considered the father of Marathi journalism, trained many journalists who went on to scale greater heights in the field of Marathi journalism. Bal Shastri Jambekar worked in the field of print journalism. He is referred as the first editor by virtue of his beginning the editor of the first Marathi newspaper Darpan, which he started from Mumbai. The news printed in Darpan can be reviewed to know about the political, economic, social and cultural events of those times, which were important in historiography. 6th January, the birth date of Bal Shastri Jambekar, who was the editor of first Marathi newspaper Darpan, is observed in Maharashtra as a journalist day. It is interesting to note that Darpan played a very significant role in social reform movement. The first monthly magazine in Marathi, Digdarshan, was also published by him. He did editing of it for 5 years. Articles on geography, physics, chemistry, environment, and nature were written in this magazine. He was an expert in many languages like Sanskrit, Marathi, English, and Hindi. He had also learnt Latin, Gujarati, French, and Bengali. He was active during the years 1864. He was active during the years 1830 and 1846 and worked for the improvement of Maharashtra and India. The society was ignorant and illiterate in those days, and people were blindfolded with black beliefs and superstitions. Hence, his contribution to the society in short span of 34 years proves admirable. In 1840, Digdarshan, the first monthly magazine in Marathi, in Marathi was started by Bal Shastri Jambekar. Jambekar believed that the reform should grow from within, in an evolutionary manner and in conformation with as far as possible the best in Hindu Shastra and tradition. Famously remembered as father of Marathi journalism, Jambekar was a source of intellectual inspiration to many. Born in Raigad district of Maharashtra, Govind Vitthal Kunte, also known as Bhau Mahajan, was the first full-time professional editor and journalist in Marathi vernacular. Bhau Mahajan received his education from Elphinstone Institute. He believed in the importance of widening the base of the vernacular literate public. In 1840s, Mahajan's effort helped create a small, autonomous reading public in Marathi. He started and was the editor of two weekly papers, Prabhakar 1841 and Dhoomketu 1853, a periodical Dhyan Darshan, and an independent press. The man held a balanced and unorthodox editorial style and aspired to create a rational vernacular society. Vernacular society of social discourse based on the ideas of common good. Through his papers, he promoted transmission of varied points of view and reasonable criticism. Mahajan ascribed the growing impoverishment of India to its economic drain and Hindu social obscurantism. He criticized the British rule with utmost vigor for its immense exploitation and drain of the country, which he stated was what built the prosperity of Britain. From the point of view of freedom struggle, Bhau Mahajan's contribution bears specific value in creating a Marathi reading public that could critically engage with and reflect upon the changes introduced by the British colonial rule in India. This was the brief intro of Govind Vittal Kunte. Now let's look in detail. On 24th October 1841, Govind Vittal Kunte began Prabhakar. Kunte was considered the first professional Marathi journalist. Like in other states, Christian missionaries tried to propagate their religion through publication in Maharashtra too. They published Jnanodaya in 1842 for the purpose. However, in the early years of Marathi journalism, many periodicals were considered with social development, reform, spread of education and knowledge. These included Jagan Mitra, Shubh Suchak, Vartaman Deepika and Vartaman Sangharsh. Krishnaji Triambak Ranaday. Krishnaji Triambak Ranaday started Denan Prakash in Pune in 1849. It was a weekly until 1904 when it became daily. It was later adopted by the Servant of India Society as its organ. Hari Narayan Apte, a famous Marathi novelist, served as its editor. Some of its contribution included Mahadev Govind Ranaday and Gopal Krishna Gokhale. Three popular weeklies during the period were Bharat Man Deepika, Bombay, edited by V.B. Gokhale; Vichar Lehari, Pune, edited by Krishna Shastri Jambekar; and Dhoomketu, Pune. Most of the journals engaged readers on progressive ideas of the West. Before we move to M.G. Ranaday, it is important that we understand why main reason for Krishnajit Trimbak Ranaday to publish a newspaper in Marathi language was to provide useful information on every topic of local interest to the people. He intended to open the newspaper for free discussion on subjects of general utility, scientific investigation, and the speculations connected with the antiques, statistics, curiosities, history, and geography of the country, especially the Deccan region. The primary aim was to disseminate knowledge and to promote the welfare of the people. Let us now look at the contribution of M.G. Ranaday or Mahadev Govind Ranaday. Mahadev Govind Ranaday, popularly referred to as Justice Ranaday, was born in Niphand, Nasik in Maharashtra on 18 January 1842. He was an Indian scholar, social reformer, judge, author, and one of the founding members of Indian National Congress. Ranaday was a social reformer and thinker who advocated against child marriage and caste system and promoted widow remarriage and education for women. He was one of the leading founders of reform societies like Prathna Samaj, the Pune Sarvajanik Sabha, and Vaktrutvotsav Tak Sabha. Towards beginning a social religious reformer, he edited Anglo-Marathi daily paper, the Indu Prakash, Ranaday, along with Vaman Abaji Modak and Dr. R. G. Bhandarkar, established the Maharashtra Girls Education Society and the oldest girls' high school at Huzurpanga in Pune, Maharashtra. He also participated in formation of the Indian National Congress due to his belief in attaining freedom from the colonial rule through constitutional means. Considered as a stalwart of Indian social reform movement, Ranaday gave movement the motto of humanize, equalize and spiritualize. His ideas boosted the drive in the upliftment of women who later on went to take up active part in the Indian freedom struggle. A founding member of the Congress, Ranaday played a major role in shaping party's initial outlook towards reform. In 1887, he was a leading figure in the Indian Social Conference, which was a reform organization associated with the Congress in its early years. In a book titled The Nationalist Movement, Indian Political Thought from Ranaday to Bhave, author Donald Brown writes the tendency of the Indian Congress to pursue the dual and sometimes incompatible objectives of reform and independence stemmed largely from Ranaday's outlook. He further states Ranaday was convinced that the association of British and India was fortunate one for both peoples as he was certain that an increase in knowledge and understanding of the mutual problem of Indians and British would inevitably remove the worst sources of evil and friction. His patience and tolerance influenced Congress and the nationalist movement until the final call for independence, and his contributions include mentoring political leader Gopal Krishna Gokhale. Ranaday was also an early member of Pratna Samaj, which attempted to revise and reform conservation of Hindu tradition. Despite coming from orthodox Chitpavan Brahmin family himself, he challenged the status quo. Ranaday believed in improving the status of women and promoted the idea of widow remarriage. He also argued that men needed to speak up for women and other marginalized groups. Ranaday is regarded as the father of Indian economics. Ranaday believed that India's excessive reliance on agriculture was the root of its problem. For him, economic development meant prioritizing industry and commerce over agriculture. Every nation which desires economic advances has to take care that its urban population bear an increasing ratio to its rural masses. With every advance it seeks to make. Ranaday stated this during an address to students of Deccan College. He emphasized on the term retrograde movement, according to which from 1871 to 1891 the number of laborers involved in agriculture increased from 56 to 66%. However, number of those manufacturing and trading decreased from 30 to 21%. In a paper titled M.G. Ranaday and the Indian System of Political Economy by Robert Goldher, it is stated that the progress of ruralization in modern India means its rustication, that is, loss of power, intelligence, and self dependence, and is distinctly retrograde movement. Every class of artisan, the spinner, the weavers, the dyers, the oilsmen, the paper maker, the silk and sugar and metal workers, etc., who are unable to bear up against the western competition, resort to the land, leave the towers, and go into the country and are lost in the mass of helpless people who are unable to bear up against scarcity and famine. Galar avers that Ranaday helped revive independent school of Indian political economy, which was able to preserve into 20th century. The prime metric of the school was understanding the growth of population density as one of the principal metrics of economic well-being. Ranaday was also key in delivering warnings to the British regarding India's flailing economy, especially during the economic decline that Bombay district suffered from 1871 to 91. He proposed that the government must take responsibility for providing credit to agriculture and manufacturers at low rate of interest. However, his proposals for reviewing the economy were rejected by the British. This was the time when Indian intellectuals found themselves at difficult crossroads, one wherein they would wonder if they should appreciate what the British had delivered to India, such as modern education system, communication, trade through railways, etc., or agitate against them for what India has been deprived of, that is, benefits of the railway trade were going to the British instead. Ranaday, Protege, Gokhale observed that Ranaday was self-reflective and had immense self-control when it came to same. Ranaday was extremely tolerant of all religions. Apart from being extremely cooperative, he firmly believed that everyone deserved a common platform for India. Mahatma Jyotirao Phule and Krishna Rao Bhaskar. Mahatma Jyotirao Phule was the greatest social reformer of Maharashtra. He had led a movement against prevailing caste restrictions in India. He revolted against the domination of Brahmins and struggled for the rights of peasants and other low caste people. Mahatma Jyotiba Phule was also the pioneer for women's education in India and fought for the education of girls throughout his life. Mahatma Jyotiba Phule and Krishna Rao Bhaskar began Deenabandhu as part of Dalit upliftment movement. Deenbandhu was the organ of Satya Sodhak Samaj founded by Phule. In Nagpur, the Hitvada, a weekly, was published in 1882. It had difficult existence and ultimately passed into the hands of the servants of the India Society in 1911. This was converted into English Weekly and in 1936 it became a daily. Jyotirao Phule was born in Mali family of Pune in 1827. He was educated at a Marathi school with a 3-year break at a mission school in Pune. In 1848, Phule began his work as a social reformer, interested in the education of low caste boys and girls when he started a school for girls of low and untouchable caste. Jyotirao Phule was a social reformer, thinker, and social activist. Amongst the low caste leader, Jyotiba Phule was one of the most vocal leaders. He was educated in a school established by Christian missionaries. Jyotirao Phule was from a caste society which was socially excluded. He was the founder of Satya Sodhak Samaj. It was founded in 1873 with the primary emphasis of this Samaj was seeking truth. Satya Sodhak Samaj propagated caste equality. It was devoted to secure social justice and human rights for low caste people. 1888, Maharashtrian social activist Vithalrao Krishnaji Vandekar had bestowed Jyotirao Phule with the honorific title Mahatma, meaning vulnerable or a great soul. Mahatma Phule worked against gender discrimination and caste discrimination. Mahatma Phule scorned the rules of pollution and purity. Jyotirao Phule worked for the upliftment of untouchables and women. These were the two groups which were considered to be the lowest in the Brahmins' culture. As he grew up, his ideas started developing concerning the injustice and existed in the Indian caste system. The claims of superiority by the Brahmins were also criticized and attacked by Jyotirao Phule. They were considered to be Aryans. Jyotirao Phule asserted that Aryans were foreigners who came to India. He argued that Aryan subjugated and defeated the true children of India. He contended that these subjugated people lived here even before the arrival of Aryans. Jyotirao Phule opined that the defeated population was treated as low caste and inferior people by the Aryans as they went on to establish their dominance. As per Jyotirao Phule, the so-called low caste people, who were also indigenous people, had the right over the power and land. As per Jyotirao Phule, upper caste had no right over power and land. Jyotirao Phule proposed unity of Atishudra untouchables and Shudras laboring caste to challenge the caste-based discrimination. While freedom fighters like Bal Gangadhar Tilak emphasized on the glory of Aryan period, Jyotirao Phule recalled the glory of pre-Aryan age. Gulamgiri, a book written by Jyotirao Phule. In 1873, Phule wrote a book named Gulamgiri, meaning slavery. 10 years earlier, slavery had ended in America after American Civil War. Jyotirao Phule had dedicated Gulamgiri to all those Americans who had fought to free slaves, thereby establishing link between black slaves of America and people of lower caste in India. In letter to the Conference of Marathi Authors, Jyotirao Phule contended that conferences and various organizations founded by upper caste people pretended modernists to be modernists when they worked in the British government. Once these people retire and get their pensions, they restore to discrimination. In 20th century, the caste reform movement was carried forward by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar in western India and E.V. Ramaswamy Naicker in southern India. There were around 15 other notable published works of Mahatma Jyotirao Phule. Jyotirao Phule for women education. Jyotirao Phule also fought against the discrimination meted out against upper caste women and miseries of the labor. This demonstrates that he argued against all forms of inequality. Some people had contended that education should be available only for privileged people. Some of the reformers argued that women have to be educated if a society has to progress. The first school for women in Pune was opened by social reformer Jyoti Rao Phule. The architect of Indian Constitution, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, had acknowledged that Mahatma Phule was one of the three masters of or gurus. There is an Indian Marathi language biographical film named Mahatma Phule. It was released in 1954. This movie was about the social reformer Mahatma Jyotirao Phule. There are statues, educational institutes, museums, all in the names of Mahatma Phule. However, Tilak had differences of opinion with other social reformers such as M.L. Ranaday on nature of reform. Gopal Ganesh Agarkar left Kesari in 1887 to start Sudharak, a bilingual, along with Gopal Krishna Gokhale. After Agarkar's death in 1895, it ceased publication. Now let us look at Anand Rao Ramchandra Dharandhar. In 1890, Anand Rao Ramchandra Dharandar started Booth, published every new and full moon day. It was the first Marathi newspaper to carry cartoons on political and social matters. It was popular, but it ceased its publication in 1904. So, this was the first publication in Maharashtra or in Marathi journalism to carry the cartoons, which was satire on political and social matters. Let us look at the contribution of Shiva Rampant Paranjape. Shiva Rampant Paranjape was a writer, journalist, and influential orator of pronounced nationalist bent. He was born in the town of Mahad in historical district of Kulaba, present-day Raigad. His parents were Parvati Bai and Mahadev, the latter being a successful lawyer. Prajanpe received his primary education in Mahad, his high school education in Ratnagiri and Pune, and his university education at Deccan College and Fergusson College in Pune. While in Ratnagiri, he was a student of influential writer Vishnu Shastri Chiplonkar. Guided by Chiplonkar, Prajanpe gained admission to the New English School in Pune in 1875. He matriculated in 1884, winning Jagannath Shankar Shrestha Sanskrit scholarship and becoming the first student to be awarded for the same. He received his MA degree in 1895, winning Gokul Das and Zala Vedant prizes in the process. Thereafter, he was employed for 2 years as a professor of Sanskrit at newly established Maharashtra College in Pune. However, under the leadership of Lokmanya Tilak, Prajanpe's regular participation in nationalist movement became a problem for the college, leading him to give up his teaching position. In 1897, as a result of passionate patriotism, Prajanpe founded the weekly Kal. In 1908, the British government in 1908, the British government indicted him on charges of sedition based on some of the writings he published in his weekly. He was consequently sentenced to 19 months in prison. He was however released on 5th October 1909 after serving for 15 months. In 1910, he was unable to pay the bail amount of 10,000 rupees that the government was demanding. Prajanpe was compelled to shut down his weekly. The government seized 10 volumes of the writings published and made prestigious through Kal, especially in the period between 1900 and 1908. Later on, at the behest of the Congress government, the volumes were declared unrestricted and were republished, with 10th volume coming out in 1937 and the other 9 appearing in 1946. Following Tilak's demise, Following Tilak's demise, Prajanpe started a new weekly, Swarajya, on 12 August 1920 and used it to applaud Mahatma Gandhi's non-cooperation movement. This weekly, however, did not enjoy the same popularity as Kal, and in 1927, due to his advancing age, Prajanpe handed over Swarajya to freedom fighter Shankar Rao. Prajanpe was active not only in his journalistic pursuits but also in social welfare movements. On May 1, 1922, he took part in Mulshi Satyagraha and was imprisoned for 6 months. He extended his support in opposing Simon Commission and propounding the Nehru Report. Prapanje uses satirical and incisive writings to give his opposing and dressing opposition a dressing down. Even when praising the merits of the armed rebellion, he was skillful in his approach. In an age of subjugation by a foreign power, he gave voice to difficult issues, aided by his sense of irony. The essays Prajan published in Kal, combining scholarship and flair, are of considerable literary value. His literary essays included in the three-part Sahitya Sangraha are both research-based and appreciative. They attest to his literary sensibilities and to the detailed nature of his scholarship. His appreciation of artwork, Pranayinicha Manobhang by Thakur Singh is considered an excellent example of creative criticism in Marathi. Equally worth mentioning are his research essay on Sanskrit dramas like Nagand, Abhinay Shakuntalam and Murucha Katik Govindachi Ghosta. His two published novels are of an epic romantic nature. Prajan, however, unable to carve a separate identity for himself in the world of fiction, he wrote Sangeet Kadambari based on Banabhatta's epic Sanskrit romance Kadambari Manaji Rao based on William Shakespeare's Macbeth and Ram Dev Rao based on Joseph Addison's Cato, a Tragedy. Apart from these, Prajapi wrote a number of plays like Pahalia Pandav based on the life of Karna. Both the glory of patriotism as well as downsides of nationalistic obsessions are themes central to his work. His plays were classical and prosodic in nature and the language used was often dense. He translated the play Subhadhara by Anna Sahib Kirloskar into Sanskrit and wrote lengthy poetic work titled Ahilyajar. He also composed some independent poems and verses to be used in drama. As discerning scholar and writer of high caliber, Prajan presided over the Akhil Bhartiya Marathi Sahitya Sammelan held in Belgaum in 1929. He passed away in Pune that same year due to complication arising from diabetes. So he became very popular within a short span of time, and his writings were a bent of patriotism, intellectual refinement with irony and sarcasm. Although Karl was very popular, but it could not survive for long. But his literary works are of high value and importance for the Marathi literature. Let us now look at the contribution of Gopal Ganesh Agarkar. Gopal Ganesh Agarkar was an educationist, freedom fighter and social reformer. He was born on 14 July 1856 in Satara district, which is present-day Sangli in Maharashtra. In his earlier years, Agarkar developed a close relationship with Tilak. As college students, he and Tilak decided never to join government job or government services and pledged to dedicate their life to the education and independence of the country. Agarkar believed that education was a powerful weapon in fight for the independence, as it would give Indians the confidence to question the Britishers and thus strengthening their fight for freedom. Agarkar established the New English School in Pune along with Tilak and Vishnu Chiplonkar. In 1884, Agarkar and Tilak established Deccan Education Society in Pune. The society members had to devote themselves entirely to the cause of education and teaching despite low pays. Agarkar was also associated with the nationalist newspaper Kesari, first published in 1880. He used to write and edit and his articles were strongly engrossed the cause of national freedom and espoused the national resistance to the British atrocities. During his lifetime, Agarkar was an active campaigner for social reforms and he believed in giving citizens their political rights. According to him, India would not be able to rise and be free if casteism and religious superstitions were not eradicated. He felt that social reforms were necessary for political reforms. He started his own newspaper, Sudharak the Reformer, which challenged both untouchability and caste system. In 1895, Agarkar passed away. He was a profound thinker who will always be remembered for his selfless service to the country. As a social reformer, agendas of Agarkar included women liberation, opposition to the superstitious rituals, removal of caste discrimination, spreading of scientific temperament, and promotion of education for both men and women. Gopal Ganesh Agarkar was inspired from the age of enlightenment in Europe and the writings of Mill, Spencer, Voltaire, and Rousseau, which made him a proponent of scientific rationalism. Gopal Krishna Agarkar was against caste system. He thought that the caste system was a roadblock to the development of contemporary society. He started his periodical Sudharak in 1887, in which he campaigned against the done injustices of untouchability and caste system. Agarkar's concern about women's rights came from his childhood. He saw the suffering of his two widowed aunts. Mill's subjection of women, which states that the standard of a given society is indicated by the position of women, was central to his advocacy for social reform. He also supported widow remarriage and fought for it. He lent support to the age of consent bill and Pandita Ramabai's widow home in Pune. Gopal Krishna Agarkar believed in the role of education in empowerment of both men and women. Towards this objective, he, along with his friend Bal Tilak, established multiple education institutions like New English School, the Deccan Education Society, and Fergusson College. A rationalist, Gopal Krishna Agarkar believed in the power of reason in inducing people to overcome blind superstitious faith. He believed in leading a life based on rationality and equality. He saw morality as distinct from religion. Now there were some ideological differences between Bal Tilak and Agarkar. Let us see. While Tilak objected to any British interference, which was based on his pride in the Hindu Brahmical tradition, Agarkar was influenced by Western intellectual tradition and he did not have any qualms with the British reformers in Indian society. Agarkar was also critical of orthodox practices in Hinduism. Tilak, on the other hand, did not like Agarkar's sarcasm about Hinduism in Kesari. This ideological differences between the two deepened with Agarkar's argument for an urgent need to bring about social reform to address the plight of women in perils of caste hierarchy in India under the very aegis of British rule. So that was the main reason which led to the drifting away of Agarkar from Kesari and starting on his own bilingual Sudharak. Let us now look at the contribution of Lokhitwali Gopal Hari Deshmukh. Now Gopal Hari Deshmukh wrote a number of open letters in Marathi weekly newspaper Prabhakar, which was published from Raigad, Maharashtra under his pen name Lokhitwali during 1848 to 49. The letters of Lokhitwali reflected his progressive and far-sighted outlook. He was pioneer political thinker who through his letters demanded Indian representation in British Parliament as means to reform the flawed and oppressive British regime. He even went so far as to say that if British did not abstain from imposing their will on the people of India, they will be compelled to leave it altogether. Deshmukh was also one of the pioneers of Swadeshi philosophy and understood the need to revitalize Indian industries to fight against poverty and unemployment. Deshmukh's political and economic ideas circulated throughout Maharashtra through his letters and played critical role in provoking political thinking and discourse in the region. Through Prabhakar, the letters of Gopal Hari Deshmukh caught the attention of the youth of Maharashtra and his ideas laid foundation for the future of struggle for Indian freedom. Deshmukh began writing articles aimed at social reform in Maharashtra at the age of 25 under the pen name Lokhitwadi. For Weekly Prabhakar, during the first 2 years, he wrote 108 articles on social reform. That group of articles has come to be known as in Marathi literature as Lokhitawadichini Shaptapatre. He took leadership role in founding Gyan Prakash, Indu Prakash and Lokhandwadi periodicals in Maharashtra. He wrote about Panipat War, Kalyog, Jati Bhed and Lankechana Itihas. He also wrote to translate English work into Marathi. In 1880, he was a member of the Governor General's Council and a judge. He wore handspun khadi to the Delhi Darbar in 1876 as a supporter of national self-reliance. Lokit Tawadi was a great social reformer and rational thinker. He encouraged people to be self-sufficient and seek Western education. These, he believed, were tools for cultivating a rational outlook and addressing country's pressing issues. Humanitarianism and social service, he argued, should be India's driving force. He was a brilliant scholar who published hundreds of articles on social issues as well as volumes on history. In his essays, he lamented widespread ignorance, outdated social values, religious dominance and in social life, and the upper classes' selfishness. He was a strong supporter of women's rights and a proponent of female education. In Maharashtra, the English-educated generation began to question old tradition, institutions, values, customs, and faces put to them to test for reason. Following this re-examination, they realized that society needed to be reformed to fit to new environment. As a result, three different types of thoughts emerged. These were represented by three notable individuals, namely Gopal Hari Deshmukh or Lokhitwadi, Vishnu Bhuva Brahmahari and Jyotiba Phule. Sorry, these thoughts currents may be designated as all-sided reformism, revilism and populism respectively. His larger works were primarily historical in nature. From 1848 onwards, he published series of short articles on religious, social, political, economic and educational topics in the periodical Prabhakar. These 108 articles, known as Shatapatre, were collected in 1860 as part of Lokhitwadiktra Nibandha Sangrah. The Shapatpatre is an outspoken, impatient and penetrating analysis of society's ill. He wrote a book called संवाद्या अथवा आर्य विधेचना कर्म विचारा अनि parikasa, a study on the sequence of Aryan learnings through unlearning thoughts and review, which is more moderate in diction and contains reviews in experienced and mature reformer. He was first to question long-standing authority and tradition, and he recognized the value of Western education and power of knowledge. Lokhitwade recognized that the principle of equality should be applied to all English and Indian relationship as well. In contradiction to some of his other statements, he added that the current form of government was not for the Indians' benefit and did not provide them with the rights as they were due. This was written by him in 1848. He advocated for creation of Indian Parliament in which the wisest people were elected regardless of caste, color, region or religion, whether they were foreigner or indigenous. This was a risky proposition. So he was a very progressive thinker who was a social reformer and a nationalist at heart. He was a reformer who thought about women and men education, wrote about child marriages, dowry system, and polygamy. We move to N.C. Kelkar now. Narasimha Chintaman Kelkar was a prolific writer and an editor. He was an early supporter of Lokmanya Tilak and one of his great literary minds of 20th century in Maharashtra. Kelkar is known in Maharashtra as Sahitya Samrat, the king of literature. He published his writings with a number of around 15,000. The Kelkar literary series consisted of 12 volumes which were released in 1938, followed by Kelkar essay series also known as Shyadri volume. Kelkar wrote plays, novels, short stories, poems, essay, travelogues, biographies, memoirs, and literary reviews. His areas of interest included history, philosophy, political science, pedagogy, and sociology. His literary work includes 10 plays, 8 novels, 2 collections of poems, 2 collections of short stories, 8 biographies, and 30-40 critical treatises. Two of his most notable plays were Tatyache Bandh and Krishna Arjuna Yuddha. His biography of Tilak, titled Lokmanya Tilak, Yanche Charitra, written through the 1920s, is a significant piece of writing. Gatagoshti is his own autobiographical book. Among his critical work were Subhashit Ani Vinod, Marathe व इंग्रेज, राज्य शास्त्र, भारतीय तत्वज्ञान, and Hasa Vinodamanamansa. N.C. Kelkar was a freedom fighter and a lawyer from Miraj town in Sangili district of Maharashtra. He was popularly called as Sahitya Samrat Tatya Sahib Kelkar, who, apart from being a lawyer and nationalist politician, was a writer, editor, dramatist, focused on philosophical and political themes. Mr. Kelkar was closely associated with Bal Gangadhar Tilak for national freedom movement. He joined Tilak both as his assistant for conducting law classes as well as for the English newspaper Maratha. After Tilak's imprisonment, Kelkar started editing Kesari newspaper too alongside Maratha. He served as vice president and president of Pune city municipality. In 1918, the latter became the secretary of the Indian delegation to England, which was sent by Indian National Congress and All India Home Rule League. After Tilak's demise, Kelkar associated with Swaraj Dal along with Motilal Nehru and C.R. Das to carry on political struggle on constitutional lines. He was elected twice as a member of Central Legislative Assembly in 1923 and 1926 respectively. Mr. Kelkar was a great political thinker, a greater man of words in both Marathi and English. He was considered to be among the noble line of thinkers and leaders consisting of M.G. Ranaday, Gopal Krishna Gokhale and Bal Gangadhar Tilak. Let us look at the status of district newspapers. One of the interesting aspects of Marathi journalism was that from the earliest time newspaper publication was not confined to a few big cities or towns. Prestigious newspapers were published from several cities, from even small towns in Maharashtra and outside the states. Sakal from Pune, Lokmat and Tarun Bharat from Nagpur, Pudhari from Kolhapur, Deshonati from Akola were forerunners. Mention must be made of Eka from Satara, Gavkari and Deshdoot from Nasik, Matrubhumi from Akola, Janmadhyam from Amravati, Sarvamat from Shirampur, Prajavani and Gudater Samachar from Nanded, Ekmat from Latur, Sagar from Chiplun, Tarun Bharat from Belgaum, Karnataka, and Gomatka from Goa are examples of the first-rate Marathi publication published from outside Maharashtra. In fact, Marathi journalism has had a long history in Portuguese India, dating back to 1872. Interestingly, many of Marathi journals contained sections in Portuguese but left no space for Konkani. By early 1920s, more than 30 Marathi journals had been or were being published. A glitch occurred early in 20th century when some extremists in British India tried to wage in the Marathi journal Satsang a campaign of hostility against British sovereignty, which they could not sustain with impunity in British territory. Lifespan of Satsang was 20 years, 1902 to 1922, founded by Lakshman Padma Bhandari. After 1908, it was edited by Ramchandra Nayak Bal Shastri, who vigorously championed the message of Congress Party in British India. Marathi journalism post-independence. After independence in 1948, the Indian Express Group started Lok Satta in Bombay, the first Marathi daily to appear after country gained freedom. The Maharashtra Times, started by the Times of India Group, came out in 1962. Mention must be made of Govind Twalkar, who not only made Maharashtra Times a respected paper but raised the benchmark of Marathi journalism. What Jambekar was to Darpan, Tilak was to Kesari, Prajan was to Kal, so was Twalkar to Maharashtra Times. Inseparable. He became the chief editor of Maharashtra Times in 1968 and remained in that role for 27 years until he retired in 1996, thus becoming one of the longest serving editors. He had written about a dozen of books on modern history. Satnathar, his book on transfer of power in India, being a masterpiece. By the end of 1984, there were 1168 Marathi newspapers according to the Registrar of Newspapers of India. Of them, 132 were dailies. By 2007 and 8, the number increased to 4,122, including 553 dailies and 1991 weeklies. Marathi publication came out from Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Goa, and Andhra Pradesh as well. By the turn of new millennium, the trend of multi-location edition had caught Marathi media houses also. By mid-2011, almost all major Marathi daily newspapers had editions from several places inside and outside the state. Most of the newspaper houses had upgraded news collection, dissemination, production, and distribution facilities. Most of them had started multimedia operations, venturing into television, radio, internet, and web enabled platforms. There are 5 papers published in Marathi from Maharashtra. Along with enriching language, the vernacular press also caters to local needs of the people. The newspapers are as follow: Daily Anka, leading Marathi newspaper published from Satara; Lok Satta in Marathi, newspaper from Maharashtra, which has branches in Mumbai, Nagpur, Pune, Ahmednagar, and Delhi. Owned by Bennett Coleman and Co. or the Times Group, Maharashtra Times is a leading Marathi daily. Samna is a Marathi newspaper and mouthpiece of Shiv Sena. Sakal is a newspaper in Marathi and it was first circulated in 1932. It is published from Pune, Jalgaon, Satara, Nagpur, Sholapur, Aurangabad, Nasik, Kolhapur, and Mumbai. Mahadev Govind Ranaday, a leading leader of Maharashtra, used to write in Gyan Prakash as well as in Hindu Prakash. Both these journals helped in awakening the conscience of the downtrodden masses. Another Marathi weekly, Kesari, was started by Tilak from 1st January 1881. He, along with Agarkar and Chimplonkar, started another weekly journal, Maratha, in English. The editor of Deccan Star, Nam Joshi, also joined them, and his paper was incorporated with Maratha. Tilak and Agarkar were convicted of writing against British and the Diwan of Kolhapur. Tilak Kesari became one of the leading media to propagate the message of freedom movement. It also made anti-partition movement in Bengal a national issue. In 1908, Tilak opposed sedition ordinance. He was later exiled from the country for 6 years. Hindi edition of Kesari was started from Nagpur and Banaras. So we have seen that what role vernacular newspaper in Marathi or Maharashtra played in mobilizing, not only mobilizing people for a common cause of freedom, Swadesh, or independence, but it also played a very important role in eradicating social evils like untouchability, caste system, treatment of widow, child marriage, sati system, and also it led the foundation for women education and women empowerment. The leaders or the thinkers or the journalists from say Maharashtra and Marathi journalism were believer of the education or knowledge as a strong weapon. They considered that if the masses were literate in the regional language or the vernacular language, the idea of Swaraj, independence, could be easily promoted, and it will also help in broadening their horizon to understand and grasp the knowledge of the world around them. This would lead to a progressive thinking which will ultimately lay the foundation of the contemporary Indian society. Thank you.